"You're useless trash, Catherine." The words hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. My mother stood at the head of the table, her face twisted with a rage I had seen building for 48 years, but never quite like this. Never this direct. Never this public. I didn't flinch. That was the strange thing. I had spent my entire life flinching at her tone, her disapproval, her silence. But in that moment, sitting at the same dining table where I had eaten countless meals while being overlooked, something different happened. I felt the words hit my chest, and instead of pain, I felt lightness, like the final thread of a fraying rope had just snapped. The smell of overcooked roast beef filled the room. Taylor's wine glass clinked against the table as she set it down, her lips curling into a satisfied smirk. Derek suddenly found his phone fascinating, scrolling through nothing. And my father, Donald, studied his mashed potatoes like they held the secrets of the universe, refusing to meet my eyes. I glanced down at the tote bag by my feet. Inside was a red folder I had been preparing for 3 weeks. 47 pages. 3 years of receipts, bank statements, and screenshots. 3 years of proof that everything they believed about me was a lie. Tonight, I would stop being invisible. But to understand why I was sitting at that table with a folder full of evidence, you need to know how I became the family ATM, and why no one ever said thank you. That Sunday dinner at my parents' colonial house in Glastonbury was supposed to be like every other, a command performance where attendance was mandatory and excuses were not accepted. I had driven 45 minutes from Hartford after working a 60-hour week, carrying a Caesar salad I had made from scratch. Homemade dressing, fresh croutons, the works. My mother greeted me at the door with her usual warmth, which is to say none at all. "You're late, and that salad looks simple." She was wearing a new cashmere sweater I didn't recognize, and I made a mental note, who paid for that? Because it certainly wasn't money from my parents' fixed income. The living room held the usual cast of characters. Taylor, my 42-year-old sister, perched on the love seat scrolling through her phone. She was wearing a new dress, I estimated at least $400, and didn't bother looking up when I entered. Derek, her husband, stood by the window nursing a drink, his body language tense and distracted. He nodded at me without making eye contact, which had become his habit lately. I knew why, but that revelation would come later. My father sat in his recliner, looking smaller and more tired than I remembered. When I approached, he reached for my hand. His grip was weak, trembling. "Katie," he said softly. "Glad you're here." He was the only person who still used my childhood nickname, and something in his voice made me pause. Was it warning? Apology? I couldn't tell. Ethan, Taylor's 16-year-old son, came downstairs and actually smiled when he saw me. "Hey, Aunt Catherine." It was the warmest greeting I received. He sat on the couch with his AirPods around his neck, watching the adults with wary eyes. He was the only one in this family who had ever apologized to me for anything. The only one who seemed to see. As I set down my tote bag by the chair I always occupied, alone on one side of the table facing the unified front of Taylor and Derek, I noticed something on the coffee table, a blue folder. Official-looking documents peeked from the edge, and I recognized the letterhead, Hartford County Real Estate Associates. My stomach tightened. Whatever they were planning, it was further along than I had anticipated. "Everyone to the table," Margaret announced with theatrical flourish. "I've made something special for this important evening." Important evening. I filed that phrase away. Dinner was served with the usual fanfare. Margaret placed the roast beef at the center of the table like she was presenting a Michelin star creation, rather than the same overcooked meat she had been making for 40 years. The mashed potatoes were lumpy, the green beans came from a can. But she acted like Julia Child unveiling a masterpiece. The conversation was forced, superficial, weather, traffic, neighborhood gossip. Taylor talked about her busy week despite having no job. Derek mentioned big deals at the car dealership despite his sales numbers being down. Margaret complimented Taylor's dress, her hair, her glow. No one asked me about my work. my life, my week. When I mentioned the possibility of a promotion, Margaret interrupted me mid-sentence. "That's nice, dear. Taylor, tell us more about that client you mentioned." The client that didn't exist, the interior design business that had never launched. But nobody questioned Taylor's fantasies. They just kept feeding them. I ate mechanically, waiting. My mind was on the red folder in my bag, the blue folder on the coffee table. 2 folders in this room, 2 different versions of the truth. Halfway through dinner, I excused myself to use the restroom. In the hallway, my father appeared, pretending to head toward the kitchen. He grabbed my arm, his voice barely above a whisper. "Katie, whatever they ask tonight, be careful." "What do you mean, Dad?" His eyes were wet, conflicted. "I know you've done more than they say, more than anyone knows. I should have—" Margaret's voice cut through from the dining room. "Donald, where did you go?" He released my arm like it was on fire. "Coming, dear." And he shuffled away without another word. I watched him retreat, his shoulders hunched with decades of defeat. He knew something, maybe everything, but he was too afraid of Margaret to speak. For the first time, I felt something other than disappointment toward my father. I felt pity. He was as trapped as I had been. The difference was, I was about to break free. After the plates were cleared, Margaret remained standing, clinking her glass like she was hosting a gala instead of a family dinner. "Now then, let's discuss why we're all here." She gestured to Taylor and Derek like a game show host presenting prizes. "Taylor and Derek have been doing some thinking about our family's future." Taylor cleared her throat, suddenly serious. "As you all know, Grandma Eleanor left us her house on Maple Lane." Left us. The lie flowed so easily from her lips. I knew the truth. That house had been transferred solely to Taylor 4 years ago, without my knowledge, based on my mother's deliberate misinterpretation of the will. But I stayed silent. Let them dig deeper. "The house has been a wonderful asset," Taylor continued, "but we think it's time to consider new options." Derek chimed in with his salesman voice. "The market is hot right now. Property values are at an all-time high." They proposed selling Grandma Eleanor's house for approximately $420,000. After fees and taxes, roughly $380,000 to split fairly among the family. Taylor made air quotes around the word fairly. But their version of fair became clear quickly. They wanted me to receive $50,000. Taylor would get $190,000. Or, and here was the real trap, I could buy Taylor's share for $250,000 to keep the house in the family. $250,000 for a house that should have been mine in the first place. Derek slid a document across the table. The blue folder. Inside was a pre-prepared agreement with my name already typed on the signature line. They had come to this dinner with paperwork ready. This wasn't a discussion. It was an ambush. "That's a lot to consider," I said, keeping my voice neutral. Taylor's smile vanished. "What's to consider? It's a great deal. I'd want to consult with a lawyer before signing anything this significant." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Margaret's face hardened. "A lawyer? We're family, Catherine." "Why do you always have to make everything so complicated?" Taylor demanded. "We're trying to do what's best for everyone," Derek added, his voice patronizing. "Don't be difficult." "You've always been like this," Margaret said, leaning forward. "Selfish, only thinking about yourself." "Selfish?" The word escaped me before I could stop it. "I've been—" Taylor cut me off. "You've never contributed to this family, not really. You just show up with your little salads and think that's enough." Derek piled on. "Your sister has a family to support. What do you have? An apartment and a cat." My father started to speak. "Now wait a minute. Donald, stay out of this," Margaret snapped. He shrank back into his chair. The brief spark in his eyes died, extinguished by 50 years of conditioning. Then I looked at the listing agreement more closely. The date jumped out at me. 3 weeks ago. "This is dated 3 weeks ago," I said quietly. The house is already listed. You've been showing it. Taylor's face flickered. Derek's smile tightened. We had to move quickly, Margaret said. The market waits for no one. And this offer pending, you've already accepted a buyer? Derek cleared his throat. We have a strong offer, $415,000. We need to respond by Friday. The truth finally surfaced. They didn't want me to buy the house. That was a decoy. They wanted me to sign away any legal claim to contest the sale. They needed my signature because somewhere, somehow, they knew the will was ambiguous. They were afraid I might challenge it. They were trying to buy my silence before I knew I had a voice. For once, they were right to be afraid. Margaret stood, palms flat on the table, her frustration boiling over. I have had enough of your attitude, Catherine. We are trying to do something good for this family, and you sit there with your silence and your suspicion. Just say what we're all thinking, Mom, Taylor interjected. Derek nodded. Exactly. It's about time. Margaret's eyes narrowed. She took a breath, and I saw it coming. The final blow. The words she had been holding back my entire life. You know what you are, Catherine? She said, her voice dripping with contempt. You're useless trash. You always have been. At least Taylor has a family, a life, a purpose. What do you have? Nothing. You're 48 years old, alone, and the only thing you're good at is hoarding money while your family struggles. The dining room went completely silent. Even the grandfather clock in the hallway seemed to stop ticking. Taylor's lips curled into a victorious smirk. Derek studied his phone. Ethan had removed his AirPods entirely, staring at his grandmother with something like horror. And my father sat frozen, fork halfway to his mouth, face drained of color. I waited for someone to say it was too far, for my father to defend me, for even Taylor to show a flicker of discomfort at the cruelty. What I got was silence, complicit, damning silence, the sound of a family choosing sides without saying a word. Something shifted inside me, not breaking. I had been broken before. This was different. This was the moment the broken pieces refused to fit back together. I felt my heartbeat slow, my breathing steady. A strange clarity descended. 48 years. I had spent 48 years being the responsible one, the strong one, the one who never needed anything from anyone. I had written checks and fixed problems and shown up to every dinner to be criticized for my salad, and this was what I was to them, useless trash. Are you finished? My voice was calm, almost gentle. Margaret blinked, thrown off. What? I asked if you were finished. I want to make sure you've said everything. Taylor rolled her eyes. We've said plenty. I nodded slowly. Good, because now it's my turn. I bent down slowly, deliberately. My hand found the tote bag by my chair. I pulled out the red folder, thick, heavy with truth, and placed it on the table with a soft thud. Margaret frowned. What is that? Taylor scoffed. Oh God, what now? Derek leaned back, suddenly wary. Donald looked up, his face draining of what little color remained. And Ethan leaned forward, like he knew something important was about to happen. I stood. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. You called me useless trash, Mom. You said I've never done anything for this family. You said I just hoard money while you struggle. I placed my hand flat on the red folder. So I have to ask you something. I looked directly at Margaret. My voice was steady, clear, cutting through the silence like a blade. Then who exactly has been paying your mortgage for the last 3 years? Taylor's fork slipped from her fingers. It clattered against her plate, the sound echoing in the stunned silence. Margaret's face went white, and for the first time in 48 years, Catherine Blake had the entire room's attention. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand the weight of that folder, you need to go back 3 years. To the night my mother called me at 2 a.m. crying. That phone call was the first lie. Not because what she told me was false. The crisis was real. The lie was what she didn't tell me. What none of them ever told me. 3 years ago, I was 45 years old. Senior financial analyst at a corporate firm in Hartford. Single, stable, careful with money. The responsible daughter who never caused problems. The one they called when things fell apart. Not because they valued me, but because they knew I would fix it. I always fixed it. My phone buzzed on the nightstand at 2:14 a.m. I saw Mom on the screen and felt immediate dread pool in my stomach. Margaret never called unless she needed something. Good news could wait until morning. Bad news demanded immediate attention and immediate solutions. I answered, heart already pounding. "Mom? What's wrong?" The sobbing on the other end was barely coherent. Between gasps and hiccups, my mother's voice emerged in fragments. "Catherine, I don't know what to do. We're going to lose everything." I sat up in bed, switched on the lamp. "Slow down. What happened?" The story came out in pieces. Donald had lost his contractor business 6 months ago, something I hadn't been told. They had been managing, which in my mother's vocabulary meant ignoring the problem and hoping it would disappear. But now the mortgage was 2 months behind. The bank had sent a foreclosure warning letter. My father was falling apart, not eating, barely speaking, sitting in the dark drinking whiskey at 10 in the morning. "Your father is so ashamed," Margaret sobbed. "He won't even look at me. I don't know what to do, Catherine. I don't know how we got here." My mind was already shifting into problem-solving mode. "How much do you owe? What's the timeline? Have you talked to the bank about options?" "I can't deal with the numbers," she said, her voice suddenly small. "You know I'm not good with that." The unspoken expectation hung in the silence between us. I was good with numbers. I was good with fixing things. I was supposed to offer now without being asked directly, so she could maintain the fiction that she wasn't asking. Then her voice dropped to a whisper, soft and trembling. "You're the only one who can help us, Catherine. You're the strong one. You've always been the strong one." I had heard this my entire life. Catherine is strong. Catherine can handle it. Catherine doesn't need help. It was the story they told themselves to justify never giving me any. I never asked to be strong. I just wasn't given another option. "I'll come over tomorrow," I said. "We'll figure this out." "Thank you, sweetheart." Her voice warmed instantly. "I knew I could count on you." As I was about to hang up, I heard something in the background. Laughter, music playing, Taylor's voice, unmistakably cheerful. At 2 a.m., while our parents faced foreclosure, my sister was apparently at a party. Margaret didn't mention her younger daughter, not once during the entire call. I stared at the ceiling until dawn. Saturday morning arrived with a gray November sky that matched my mood. I pulled into my parents' driveway and saw immediately that something was wrong. The lawn was overgrown, unusual for Donald, who had always been meticulous about yard work. Paint was peeling on the shutters. The gutters sagged at the corners. These weren't signs of a recent crisis. This was neglect that had accumulated over months, maybe years. Inside was worse. The house smelled stale, like windows hadn't been opened in weeks. As Margaret led me through the hallway, I noticed things missing. The grandfather clock that had belonged to my grandmother. The silver candlesticks that used to sit on the mantel, the oil painting that had hung in the foyer since I was a child. "Mom, where's Grandma's clock?" Margaret waved dismissively. "We sold a few things, just decluttering." Decluttering. They had been selling family heirlooms to pay bills, and no one had thought to mention it. I found my father in the den, sitting in darkness. The curtains were drawn, the television off. Just sitting. A glass of whiskey sat on the table beside him, at 10 in the morning. When I entered, he looked up. His eyes were red, hollow, the eyes of a man who had lost something essential. "Katie." His voice cracked on my name. "You didn't have to come." "Yes, I did, Dad." I knelt beside his chair, took his hand. This was the man who had taught me to ride a bike, who had stayed up late helping with math homework, who had quietly slipped me $20 for gas money when I was in college. That man was disappearing into this chair, drowning in shame. Margaret led me to the kitchen table, where a cardboard box overflowed with envelopes. Many were unopened. Red stamps shouted from the pile, "Past due, final notice, urgent." I sat down and began sorting. 3 hours later, I had a complete picture of the disaster. I created a spreadsheet on my laptop, categorizing every debt, every overdue bill, every threatening letter. The mortgage was $18,400 in arrears, 2 months of payments plus late fees. Credit card number 1, in Margaret's name, carried a balance of $4,200. The joint credit card added another $3,100. Property taxes had become a lien, $2,800. Medical bills from Donald's back surgery last year totaled $6,500, most of it sent to collections. The immediate crisis alone was approximately $35,000. But the numbers weren't the worst part. As I reviewed the charges on Margaret's credit card, I found expenses that made no sense for a family facing foreclosure. Spa treatments, restaurant bills, a $600 home decor purchase, and a recurring monthly charge of $200 to something called TK Designs LLC. I didn't ask about it. Not yet. I filed it away. I had savings, enough to cover this and more. I had been careful my entire life. No fancy vacations, no designer clothes, driving the same Honda for 8 years. I saved because I always feared something like this might happen. I just didn't expect something like this to be my own parents. Once I had the full picture laid out, Margaret sat across from me. The tears were gone. In their place was something calculating, something I recognized but had never named. "So," she said, "can you help us?" What followed was a masterclass in manipulation. "Your father is so ashamed," she began. "If he had to tell people at church that we lost the house." She let the sentence trail off, letting me imagine the humiliation. "We raised you in this home, Catherine. All your memories are here. Your first steps, your high school graduation, everything. You know Taylor can't help. She has Ethan to think about, and Derek's job isn't stable. You're the successful one, Catherine. You made something of yourself. We're so proud of you." Proud. She used that word like a key, trying to unlock my wallet. I agreed to pay off the mortgage arrears. I would set up automatic transfers to cover the monthly payments until Donald found work, but I had one condition. "We need to tell Taylor," I said. "She should contribute something, even a little." Margaret's face tightened like I had suggested something obscene. "Absolutely not. Taylor has enough stress. Her marriage is difficult." "She has a child to raise. You don't understand the pressure she's under. Besides, Taylor is sensitive. This would devastate her." I looked at my mother. "And I'm not sensitive?" Her silence was my answer. It said everything her words never would. I agreed to keep it secret, for now. I told myself it was to protect my father's dignity. Deep down, I knew the truth. Fighting Margaret was exhausting, and I had been trained since childhood to keep the peace, even at my own expense. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You've always been our rock, Catherine. Taylor is, well, she's more delicate. She needs to be protected. You understand?" I nodded, but my mind was churning. Protected from what? From reality? From consequences? From ever having to grow up? I wrote the first check that afternoon. Set up the payment plan with the bank. $6,200 per month for 3 months to clear the arrears, then regular mortgage payments ongoing. I adjusted my own budget. No more dinners out, cancel the gym membership, postpone the bathroom renovation I had been planning. It was fine. I could handle it. I was strong. Driving home that evening, memories surfaced unbidden. The pattern had been there my whole life. I just never had a name for it. Age 8. My birthday party was canceled because Taylor threw a tantrum about something. We spent the day at her favorite park instead. Age 12. I won an essay contest, but the family skipped the award ceremony because Taylor had a dance recital the same night. Nobody suggested we split up, half going to each event. Age 16. I got accepted to UConn with a scholarship. At dinner that night, Margaret spent 20 minutes discussing Taylor's homecoming dress. I was never the strong one. I was the one they didn't bother to take care of. Strong was just another word for neglected. The daughter who never complained, so they assumed she never needed anything. This is just temporary, I told myself, merging onto the highway. Dad will find work. They'll get back on their feet. Once they're stable, I'll step back. Family helps family. This is what you do. 3 years later, I would still be telling myself the same lies. 2 days after my visit, Taylor called. This was unusual. My sister rarely reached out unless she needed something. Her voice was bright, cheerful, completely oblivious. "Hey sis, how are you? It's been forever." We made small talk for 5 minutes. She complained about Ethan's school, about Derek working late, about a neighbor who didn't maintain their lawn. Normal sister conversation, if you didn't know what I now knew. Then she got to the point. "So, I have this amazing opportunity. A client wants me to design their lake house. Huge project. Very prestigious." "That sounds great, Taylor. The thing is, I need to put down a deposit for materials. Just $500. I'll pay you back next month, I promise." My grip tightened on the phone. "Taylor, have you talked to Mom and Dad lately?" "Oh, you know how they are. Mom's always complaining about something." "They didn't mention anything about money problems?" Taylor laughed. It was the laugh of someone who had never worried about money in her life. "Mom and Dad? Please, they're fine. Dad's just being dramatic about retiring." She didn't know. Margaret hadn't told her a thing. While I was restructuring my entire budget to save their parents' house, Taylor was asking me for $500 for a client who probably didn't exist. I transferred the money anyway. It was easier than arguing, easier than explaining, easier than confronting the unfairness that was so baked into this family that no one even noticed it anymore. "Thanks, sis. You're the best." That was the first 500. Over the next 3 years, there would be many more. And not once, not a single time, did anyone say thank you. Margaret's face at the dinner table 3 years later was still frozen in shock. Taylor's fork lay on her plate where it had fallen. The question I had asked hung in the air like a blade. Who exactly has been paying your mortgage for the last 3 years? But the $500 here and there wasn't enough for them. The requests got bigger. The lies got more elaborate. And I kept paying, kept believing I was helping, kept hoping that someday they would see what I was sacrificing. By the end of the first year, I had given them over $15,000. By the end of the second year, the total exceeded $32,000. And the worst part? I still thought I was helping. I didn't know then that while I was paying their mortgage, they were telling Taylor a very different story. A story where I was the selfish sister who never helped with anything. A story where I was too wrapped up in my career to care about family. A story where every Sunday dinner I missed because I was working overtime to afford their lifestyle was proof that I didn't love them. I was the villain in a narrative I didn't even know existed, but I was about to find out. 6 months into the arrangement, I sat at my desk at 7 in the evening, office empty, spreadsheet open on my screen. I was tracking 2 sets of finances now, my own and my parents'. The mortgage was current. The immediate crisis had passed. But the bleeding hadn't stopped. It had just slowed to a steady, manageable hemorrhage. Every month I transferred money I would never see again. I had adjusted my lifestyle to accommodate this new reality. Lunch from home instead of the cafe downstairs. No new clothes unless something wore out completely. Streaming services canceled. The thermostat set 2 degrees lower in winter. My co-workers thought I was just frugal. They didn't know I was supporting 2 households on 1 salary. I was tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. It was the tiredness of carrying something invisible, something no one acknowledged. No one saw the weight. No one offered to help carry it, because no one knew it existed. The first 6 months were manageable, I told myself. Temporary, but that's the thing about patterns. They don't announce themselves. They creep in slowly, take root quietly, until one day you realize you're trapped in a maze you built with your own hands. Month 7 brought the first credit card emergency. Margaret called, her voice tight with stress. Catherine, there's been a mistake. The credit card company is saying we owe $3,800. I don't understand how this happened. I pulled up the account on my computer. I had the login credentials now, for monitoring purposes. The charges painted a clear picture. A weekend at a bed and breakfast, new patio furniture, a $400 wellness consultation, and various smaller purchases that added up quickly. Mom, these aren't mistakes. These are purchases. We needed to relax. Her voice turned defensive, then wounded. Your father's depression is affecting me too, Catherine. The stress is unbearable. Don't I deserve some peace? I paid the balance. What else could I do? Month 9 brought Taylor's car situation. Her SUV broke down, and Derek declared it totaled without ever getting a mechanic's opinion. I suspected he simply didn't want to pay for repairs. Taylor needed a new car to drive Ethan to school and meet clients. The clients I had never seen evidence of. The interior design business that existed only in her Instagram bio. Margaret called on Taylor's behalf. Can you help with the down payment? Just $2,500. She'll pay you back, I promise. I knew Taylor would never pay me back. The words pay you back had become a family joke that no one found funny except them. I transferred the money anyway. Month 11 brought the property tax surprise. A letter arrived at my parents' house. I was receiving copies of their mail now, another task I had absorbed, informing them that property taxes were delinquent. A lien would be placed on the house if not paid within 30 days. Amount due, $4,200. I hadn't known property taxes weren't included in the mortgage payment. No one had thought to mention it. Or they had, and chose not to. That night I started a document on my computer. Just for myself. Just to see the numbers clearly. 6 months in, I had given them $22,400. The number made me physically ill. While reviewing the credit card statements that month, I noticed something I had filed away earlier. Margaret was making monthly payments of $200 to TK Designs LLC, the same mysterious company I had seen in the original pile of bills. My curiosity finally won. I searched for it online. The registered agent was Taylor Marie Kensington. My mother was paying Taylor a monthly salary for a business that had no website, no portfolio, no evidence of any actual clients or projects. $200 a month, funded by money I was providing. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I highlighted the entries in my spreadsheet and kept scrolling. The promotion offer came 4 months later. My boss called me into his office with a smile I had learned to recognize. Good news. Catherine, we want to promote you, Vice President of Financial Analysis. My heart leaped. This was everything I had worked toward for 15 years. The title, the recognition, the validation that my competence mattered. Then came the condition. There's one catch. The position is in our New York office. You'd need to relocate. New York. Higher salary, bigger title, the career advancement I had earned years ago. But also higher cost of living, 3 hours from my parents, harder to monitor their finances, impossible to drop everything and drive to Glastonbury when the next crisis hit. If I left, who would catch the problems before they became catastrophes? If I left, who would my mother call at 2 a.m? I mentioned the opportunity to Margaret casually, testing the waters. New York? Her voice sharpened immediately. That's so far. What about Sunday dinners? What if your father has another health scare? You'd be hours away. Family has to come first, Catherine. That's what matters in the end. No congratulations. No, what a wonderful opportunity. Just guilt, applied with surgical precision. I declined the promotion. I told my boss it wasn't the right time for personal reasons. He looked disappointed but understanding. I walked back to my desk and stared at my computer screen for 20 minutes, unseeing. I didn't cry. I wasn't sure I remembered how. I told myself I was being responsible, putting family first. But here's what I couldn't admit. I was afraid. Afraid of what would happen if I wasn't there to fix things. Afraid of the guilt they would pile on me. Afraid of being the daughter who abandoned her parents. So I abandoned myself instead. I met Carol in a hospital waiting room, month 14. My father had a cardiac scare, severe anxiety presenting as chest pain, though we didn't know that for 6 terrifying hours. I sat alone in the ER waiting area, watching the clock, waiting for news. Margaret was with Donald. Taylor couldn't get away. Ethan had soccer practice. A woman about my age sat down nearby. Scrubs, tired eyes, kind face, clearly medical staff on a break. She noticed my hands shaking, the untouched coffee growing cold, the 1,000-yard stare I had perfected. "Rough night?" she asked. I laughed bitterly. "Rough year." Something about her openness, her lack of judgment, made me start talking. I told her everything: the mortgage, the credit cards, the promotion I had turned down, the sister who asked for money while posting vacation photos. Carol listened without interrupting, without offering empty platitudes. When I finally stopped, she was quiet for a long moment. "Can I tell you something?" she said. 10 years ago, I was you." Carol had spent a decade supporting her husband's family, his parents, his brother's kids. She paid for everything, fixed everything, was the responsible one everyone relied on. "You know how they thanked me?" she said. "When I finally stopped, they called me selfish. My own husband sided with them." "What happened?" "I lost the marriage. But I got myself back." She leaned toward me, her voice firm but gentle. "You're not helping them, Catherine. You're enabling them. Every time you fix a problem they created, you teach them they don't have to change, they don't have to grow up, they don't have to face consequences. But they're my family. And they will drain you dry, not because they're evil, because you're letting them. Because it's easier to take from you than to fix themselves." She gave me her phone number. "When you're ready to stop drowning, call me." I put the number in my phone but didn't call. Not yet. I wasn't ready to admit she might be right, but her words echoed in my head for months. "You're not helping them. You're enabling them." Month 16. Sunday dinner at my parents' house. I arrived early, unusual for me, but traffic had been light. The front door was unlocked, so I let myself in. Voices drifted from the kitchen. Margaret and Taylor mid-conversation. I froze in the hallway, hidden by the wall. "I just don't understand why we have to keep asking Catherine," Taylor was saying. "She acts like it's such a burden." "Oh, you know how she is." Margaret's voice dripped with dismissal. "Dramatic. She has a good job, no kids, no expenses. She can afford it." "Derek thinks she's judging us, like she's better than everyone because she has money. Just let her play the martyr. As long as the check's clear, who cares?" They laughed. Both of them, laughing together. At me. The woman who was keeping their lives afloat was a joke to them. My hand gripped the wall. My vision blurred. Something cracked inside my chest, not breaking but shifting, rearranging. I took a breath, composed myself, walked into the kitchen with a smile plastered on my face. "Sorry I'm early. Traffic was good." Margaret and Taylor's expressions transformed instantly, warm, welcoming, as if the conversation I had just overheard had never happened. "Catherine, perfect timing. Can you set the table?" I set the table. I ate dinner. I laughed at my father's jokes. I complimented Margaret's cooking and asked Taylor about her projects. Inside, something fundamental had shifted. That was the moment I started keeping records. Not to confront them. Not yet. But because I finally understood, I wasn't family to them. I was a resource. And resources get used up and discarded. Month 18. Another property tax bill. Another $4,000. I transferred the money on a Tuesday, right before the deadline. That week, I ate ramen for dinner every night to balance my budget. On Friday, my phone buzzed with an Instagram notification. Taylor had posted a new photo. She and Derek were on a beach. Cancun, Mexico, matching sunglasses, tropical drinks with little umbrellas, perfect tans. The caption read, "Sometimes you just need to escape. Self-care isn't selfish." Blessed va in vacation mode. Ba living my best life. I stared at the photo for a full minute. A week in Cancun, easily $3,000 to $5,000. The property tax I had just paid, $4,000. The SUV down payment I had given Taylor 6 months earlier, $2,500. Derek's supposedly unstable job apparently stable enough for international travel. I took a screenshot, added it to my growing file. I didn't comment. I didn't confront. But I stopped believing the lies they told me about their circumstances. That night, I opened my tracking document and created a new column. What they told me versus what actually happened. The first entry. Taylor can't contribute because Derek's job is unstable. Reality. Cancun vacation posted same week I paid $4,000 in property tax. The document would eventually grow to 47 pages. Month 20 brought the discovery that finally broke something in me. I stopped by my parents' house to drop off groceries. Margaret had forgotten to shop, and Donald shouldn't be driving with his anxiety medication. On the mantel in the living room, displayed prominently, I noticed a card I hadn't seen before. Curious, I picked it up and read it. It was a thank you card from Margaret to Taylor. Inside, she had written, "To my darling Taylor, thank you for always being there for this family. Your support means the world. We couldn't do this without you. Love, Mom." Dated last week. Taylor's support? In the last 20 months, Taylor had contributed exactly $0 to our parents' situation. She had received the car down payment, the monthly salary for her fake business, countless small loans that were never repaid. And Margaret was thanking her for being there? This wasn't just favoritism. This was a rewritten history. Margaret had created a narrative where Taylor was the supportive daughter, the one who cared, the one who showed up. And Catherine didn't exist in that story. Or worse, Catherine was the villain, the selfish one, the one who hoarded money while her family struggled. I put the card back exactly where I had found it, left the groceries on the counter, drove home in silence. That night, I called Carol for the first time. She answered on the second ring. "I was wondering when you'd call." My voice came out hoarse, cracked. "I think I'm drowning." "Then stop swimming toward people who are holding your head underwater." I didn't respond. The words were too heavy, too true. Carol continued, her voice gentle but firm. "Start documenting everything. Dates, amounts, receipts. Not to use against them, not yet. But so you can see the truth clearly. It's harder to lie to yourself when the numbers are staring back at you." That night, I organized everything. Bank statements, screenshots, receipts, all transferred into a folder on my computer. I labeled it Family Support Tracking. Later, I would rename it Evidence. By the end of year 2, I had given them over $32,000. I had documented every cent, every request, every lie they told me about their circumstances while spending money they didn't have on luxuries I couldn't afford. But the worst discovery was still ahead, the one that would show me just how deep the betrayal went. It started with my 47th birthday, the birthday that no one remembered, and ended with an email I was never supposed to see about a house I didn't know my sister owned. I woke on the morning of October 15th to autumn light streaming through my bedroom window. My 47th birthday. I lay still for a moment, allowing myself a small, fragile hope. Maybe this year would be different. Maybe someone would remember. I reached for my phone on the nightstand and checked for notifications. No missed calls, no text messages. I scrolled through what had arrived overnight. Work emails, a sale notification from Target, my credit card statement reminder. Nothing from Margaret, nothing from Donald, nothing from Taylor. It was 8:47 a.m. Still early, I told myself. They might call later. I showered, dressed, made coffee. I had taken the day off work, a rare indulgence I almost never allowed myself. I had vague plans. Maybe treat myself to lunch at that Italian place I'd been wanting to try. Visit the bookstore downtown, buy myself something nice. But mostly, if I was being honest, I had hoped someone else would make plans for me. By noon, my phone remained silent. I texted the family group chat. "Hey everyone, how's your week going?" 3 hours passed. No response. I made myself a sandwich and ate it standing over the sink, watching the October clouds drift past my window. I want to tell you I didn't care. That birthdays stopped mattering somewhere in my 30s, that I had outgrown the need for acknowledgement. But that would be a lie. 47 years old, and I was still that little girl waiting for someone to notice she existed. By 6 in the evening, I accepted the truth. No one was coming. No one was calling. I refused to sit home feeling sorry for myself. I put on a nice dress, one I had bought 2 years ago and never worn because there was never an occasion, and drove to an upscale restaurant downtown. The kind of place I never went because I was always saving money. Tonight I was spending money. On myself. For once. The hostess looked up with a practiced smile. "Table for how many?" "Just one." "Just one tonight?" The pity in her eyes was barely concealed. The way she said "just" made it sound like a diagnosis. She seated me near the window. I watched couples lean toward each other over candlelight, families laughing at inside jokes, friends clinking glasses in celebration. The normal life I had somehow missed while I was busy paying everyone else's bills. I ordered a glass of expensive wine. Then another. The waiter was kind, attentive, probably sensing the particular loneliness of someone dining alone on what was clearly a significant evening. My phone rang at 6:42 p.m. Margaret's name lit up the screen. My heart leaped despite everything. I answered, forcing my voice to stay neutral. "Hi, Mom." "Catherine, I need you to pick up Dad's prescription tomorrow. The pharmacy closes at 6 and I have my book club." I waited. Surely the birthday wish was coming. A pause for dramatic effect, then, "Happy birthday, sweetheart." Any second now. "Hello? Did you hear me?" "Yes, Mom. I'll pick it up." "Good. Oh, and remind me to tell you about Taylor's exciting news. But I have to run. Book club!" The line went dead. I stared at my phone. The call had lasted 47 seconds. The same number as my age. I almost laughed at the cosmic joke. The waiter appeared with a small chocolate cake, a single candle flickering on top. "I didn't order this." He smiled gently. "I know, you looked like you needed it." I tipped him 40% and ate every bite alone. That night, I made myself a promise. I would never again wait for them to remember me. If I wanted to be celebrated, I would celebrate myself. But I wasn't ready to stop hoping entirely. That would take a few more months. 3 weeks after my forgotten birthday, Margaret called with unusual excitement. "Catherine, we're having a special family gathering this Saturday. Taylor has wonderful news." "What kind of news?" "She wants to announce it herself. You must be there. It's very important to your sister." I rearranged my weekend plans, a quiet trip to the farmer's market I had been looking forward to, without protest. I had been trained well. When I arrived at my parents' house, the transformation was startling. Fairy lights draped the living room, candles flickered on every surface. A banner stretched across the wall. "Congratulations, Taylor!" Taylor stood in the center of the room, glowing with self-importance. She wore a new outfit I estimated at $500 minimum. Derek hovered nearby, looking uncomfortable. I noted his body language, the way he kept checking his phone. Ethan sat on the couch, clearly forced to attend, absorbed in his video game. Margaret clapped her hands for attention. "Everyone, Taylor has an announcement." Taylor cleared her throat with theatrical gravity. "I've been keeping a secret. For months I've been working on something special." She unveiled a display table I hadn't noticed. Mason jars filled with candles in various colors. Lavender, vanilla, something labeled Ocean Breeze. "I'm launching my own business, handcrafted luxury candles. I'm calling it Taylor's Glow." Margaret applauded like Taylor had just announced she was curing cancer. Donald nodded politely. Derek stared at his phone. Taylor launched into a rehearsed pitch about following her passion and market research and target demographics and influencer partnerships. She spoke like a contestant on a business reality show, using words she had clearly memorized without understanding. I listened, mentally calculating. Taylor had no business experience, No marketing background, no track record of completing anything she started. But she was presenting this like she was the next Martha Stewart. Then came the pivot I had been waiting for. Taylor's voice softened, became vulnerable. There's just one small obstacle. To do this right, to really make it work, I need startup capital. The room seemed to lean toward me. The equipment, the supplies, the website, the packaging, it's about $15,000. Everyone looked at Catherine. Of course they did. Margaret reached over and squeezed my hand. We're all so proud of Taylor for following her dreams. Family supports family, right? The touch felt like a transaction, a down payment on guilt. I noticed Taylor hadn't made eye contact with me once during the entire presentation. The pressure came from all directions. Taylor's eyes filled with practiced tears. I've done all the work. I just need someone to believe in me. Margaret nodded gravely. This could be Taylor's future, Catherine, her independence. Donald cleared his throat. It would be nice to see Taylor settled. Even Derek contributed. It's a solid business plan. I've looked at the numbers. I doubted Derek had looked at anything except his phone in months. For the first time in my life, I didn't immediately agree. That's a significant amount, Taylor. Have you looked into small business loans? Her face flickered with annoyance. Banks don't understand creative businesses. What about investors? There are programs for women entrepreneurs. Margaret cut me off sharply. Catherine, why are you making this difficult? Taylor's tears increased on cue. I knew you wouldn't support me. You never have. Your sister has a family to feed, Margaret said, her voice rising. What do you have? A job and an apartment. You can afford this. Think about Ethan, Derek added. If this business succeeds, it helps the whole family. It's an investment, really, Taylor sniffed. I'll pay you back with interest. I had heard pay you back before. It had never happened, not once. I looked at my father. Donald's eyes were apologetic but silent. He wouldn't defend me. He never did. I need to think about it, I said. $15,000 is a lot of money. The room went silent. Actual gasps. You would have thought I had announced I was joining a cult. Think about it? Taylor's tears evaporated instantly. You'd make me wait? Margaret stood, her face contorting with fury. I can't believe you're being so selfish, after everything we've done for you. I gathered my purse to leave. As I stood, movement caught my eye. Ethan had looked up from his video game. He caught my gaze and mouthed something. It took me a moment to understand. I'm sorry. He was 16 years old, and he was the only person in that room who saw what was happening. The text messages started before I reached my car. Margaret, I raised you better than this. Margaret, Taylor is devastated. Margaret, call me immediately. Taylor, thanks for humiliating me in front of everyone. Taylor, Derek thinks you're jealous of our family. Taylor, some sister you are. Margaret, your father is very disappointed in you. 7 messages in 10 minutes, each one a carefully aimed arrow. I sat on my couch that night, reading them over and over. The familiar voices in my head competed for attention. You're being selfish. They need you. What's $15,000 compared to family? I thought about Christmas, Thanksgiving, every future gathering, the cold shoulders, the passive-aggressive comments, the suffocating silence, the price of saying no. At 11 p.m., I called Margaret. I'll do it. I'll give Taylor the money. Her voice warmed instantly. Oh, Catherine, I knew you'd come around. You always do. I'll transfer it tomorrow. Make it Monday. Taylor wants to start ordering supplies right away. Monday morning, I transferred $15,000 to Taylor's account, the largest single amount I had ever given them. Her response came an hour later, a text message, 4 characters long. Got it. The X. Not, thank you so much, Catherine. Not, I really appreciate this. Not, I won't let you down. Got it. Bex. 4 characters of gratitude for $15,000. 3 months later, I asked Margaret about the candle business. How's Taylor's Glow coming along? Has she launched yet? Margaret's response was vague. Oh, you know Taylor, she's so busy. Busy with what? I thought the business was her priority. She changed the subject. I searched online for Taylor's Glow. Nothing. No website, no Instagram account, no Etsy shop. I checked Taylor's personal social media. Plenty of posts. Brunch with friends, shopping hauls, date nights with Derek. Not a single candle in sight. At the next Sunday dinner, I asked Taylor directly, "How's the candle business? I'd love to see your website." Her smile tightened. "It's in development. These things take time." "It's been 3 months. What have you been working on?" Derek interjected. "She's doing market research. You wouldn't understand." Taylor nodded. "Not everyone rushes into things, Catherine. Some of us are strategic." Later that evening, while helping Margaret clear the table, I noticed a shopping bag by the back door. Nordstrom. I glanced inside. A designer handbag, tags still attached. $1,200. That was 8% of the business capital sitting in a shopping bag. I took a photo with my phone. Evidence. The candle business never existed. I don't mean it failed. I mean it was never real. The supplies were never ordered. The website was never built. $15,000 had become shopping trips and spa days, and that handbag by the door. And I had paid for all of it. A few weeks later, I arrived early for Sunday dinner again. Only Ethan was in the living room, homework spread across the coffee table. We made small talk. His classes, his friends, his college plans. He was guarded at first, the way teenagers are with adults they don't trust. But slowly he opened up. I mentioned I had been working extra hours lately. Ethan snorted. "That's what Mom says about you." My radar activated. "What does your mom say about me?" He hesitated, realizing he had said too much. "Nothing, just, you know." "I don't know, actually. Tell me." He shifted uncomfortably on the couch. "She says you're, like, super rich, that you don't need to worry about money." "What else?" "She says you're selfish because you don't help the family more." The words landed like punches. "Anything else?" "And Grandma says—" He trailed off. "Says what?" "Grandma says you owe them, because they raised you." He looked up, guilty and conflicted. "I don't think that's true. You're not selfish." I kept my face neutral, but inside I was reeling. "Thank you, Ethan. That means a lot. Can I tell you something?" I leaned closer. "I'm not rich. I just work hard and save." "And I do help. More than anyone knows." Ethan nodded slowly, processing. "I figured. Mom always makes stuff up." From that day forward, Ethan treated me differently. Small things. Saving me a seat at dinner, asking about my week, defending me when Taylor made snide comments. He was the only one in the family who saw me clearly. I met Carol for coffee at our regular spot, a quiet cafe in West Hartford. I told her about the candle business, the $15,000, the nothing that came of it. She stirred her latte slowly, listening without judgment. "You know what you're dealing with, right? A spoiled sister and enabling parents?" Carol shook her head. "Parasites. That's the word. You're the host organism. They've built their entire lifestyle around extracting resources from you. And they've created a story where you're the bad guy so they never have to feel guilty." Carol. "Catherine, I've seen this before. With families like this, there are only 2 outcomes." She held up 2 fingers. "Either you cut them off completely and save yourself, or they drain you until there's nothing left. Your money, your time, your health, your soul. There has to be a middle ground, some way to set boundaries." "There is no middle ground, no compromise they'll respect. You have to choose." I stared into my coffee. "They're my family. I can't just abandon them." Carol's eyes were sad but firm. "Honey, they abandoned you a long time ago. You just haven't accepted it yet." I left that conversation shaken. Carol was right. I knew she was right. But knowing and accepting are different things. It would take one more discovery, one final betrayal, to push me over the edge. And that discovery was waiting for me in my father's email inbox, in a message about property deeds and family trusts that I was never supposed to see. It started with a computer problem. It ended with the revelation that while I had been paying their mortgage, sacrificing my future, giving up my promotion, my mother had quietly transferred my grandmother's house to Taylor. 4 years ago. Without telling me, without asking me, without so much as a whisper that my grandmother had left anything to anyone. The house that should have been mine. My phone rang at 9 on a Saturday morning. Donald's name appeared on the screen, and I felt the familiar mix of love and exhaustion that came with any contact from my family. "Katie, I need your help." His voice was frustrated, embarrassed. "The computer is doing something strange." I had become the family IT department somewhere along the way, another role I had absorbed without being asked. "What's it doing, Dad?" "I don't know. There are pop-ups everywhere, and I can't find my email. Everything's just wrong." I sighed internally. I had been planning to try a yoga class that morning, something Carol had recommended for stress. Another small pleasure sacrificed at the altar of family obligation. "I'll be there in an hour, Dad." The drive to Glastonbury took 45 minutes. 45 minutes to think about the fact that Taylor lived 15 minutes from our parents and was never asked to help with anything. 45 minutes to wonder why I kept showing up when no one ever showed up for me. But Donald had asked for me specifically. That still meant something, even if I couldn't explain why. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed both cars were gone, Margaret's sedan and Taylor's SUV. Only my father's old truck sat in the garage, unused since he'd stopped driving regularly. The house was quiet in a way it rarely was when Margaret was home. No television blaring her favorite talk shows, no phone conversations conducted at full volume, just silence. Donald met me at the door looking sheepish. "Thanks for coming, Katie. I know you're busy." "It's fine, Dad." It wasn't fine, but the words came automatically. His desktop computer was a mess, infected with adware from clicking some suspicious link, browser hijacked, pop-ups multiplying like rabbits. A simple fix, but my father watched me work like I was performing surgery, marveling at each click and keystroke. "You're so smart, Katie. I never understood these machines." While the antivirus scan ran, we sat together in his den. He offered me coffee, and I accepted. For a few minutes we just talked. About the weather, about the garden he was trying to maintain, about a history book he was reading. Normal conversation, the kind we rarely had anymore. I noticed things as we talked. His hands trembled slightly when he lifted his cup. He had lost weight since I'd last really looked at him. The den was messier than usual. Papers scattered across his desk, bills stacked haphazardly, the organized chaos of a man losing his grip. "Dad, are you okay? Really okay?" He looked at me for a long moment. Something flickered in his eyes, a struggle, a decision being weighed. "Katie, He stopped, swallowed hard. "There are things I should have told you. Things I should have done differently." My heart rate increased. "What things, Dad?" He opened his mouth to speak. The front door opened. Margaret's voice cut through the house like a blade. "Donald, whose car is in the driveway?" The moment shattered. My father's face closed like a door slamming shut. Whatever he had been about to tell me retreated behind walls I would never breach. "Never mind," he said quietly. "It's nothing. Thank you for fixing the computer." Margaret entered the den, her presence immediately dominating the space. "Catherine, what a nice surprise. Helping your father with his technology troubles?" "Just clearing some malware." "So nice of you to come all this way. Taylor is so busy with Ethan's activities, you know." I caught my father's expression as Margaret spoke. It wasn't relief at his wife's return. It was fear. Donald Blake was afraid of his own wife. How long had this been true? How had I never seen it before? I turned back to the computer to finish the cleanup. Margaret hovered, making small talk I didn't want, while my mind raced with questions I couldn't ask. I was clearing the last of the browser tabs when a notification popped up in the corner of the screen. An email alert. Subject: RE, transfer of property deed, Blake Family Trust. Sender: Henderson and Associates, attorneys at law. My finger froze over the mouse. This was my father's private email. I had no right to read it. But Blake Family Trust. That would include me, wouldn't it? And property deed. What property? The only real estate the family owned was this house and Grandma Eleanor's house, the rental property on Maple Lane that had been in the family for decades. Margaret was in the kitchen now, making noise with dishes. Donald had shuffled off to the bathroom. I had maybe 2 minutes alone. My hand moved before my conscience could stop it. I clicked. The email was a reply in a longer thread. I scrolled quickly, scanning the conversation from the beginning. The original message was dated 4 years ago. 4 years. The language was legal, formal, but the meaning was clear. Transfer of deed as per Margaret Blake's instructions. The property address: 47 Maple Lane, Glastonbury, Connecticut. Grandma Eleanor's house. The new owner listed on the deed: Taylor Marie Kensington. I read the words 3 times. They didn't change. Taylor owned Grandma Eleanor's house. Had owned it for 4 years. While I had been paying the family's bills, sacrificing my savings, turning down promotions, eating ramen to make ends meet, my sister had been sitting on a property worth nearly $400,000. And no one had told me. I heard the toilet flush. Donald would be back any second. Moving quickly, I forwarded the entire email thread to my own address. Then I deleted the forwarded message from the sent folder, erasing my tracks. My hands were shaking, but my mind was razor sharp. Before closing, I searched Donald's email for related messages. Eleanor, property, deed, trust. More emails surfaced. A treasure trove of family secrets I was never supposed to see. I forwarded 3 more, deleted the evidence, and closed the browser just as Donald's footsteps approached. All fixed, Dad. You should be good now. He thanked me without meeting my eyes. Margaret called from the kitchen, inviting me to stay for lunch. I made an excuse about work and left as quickly as I could. The drive home was a blur. My mind kept circling back to what I'd seen. Grandma Eleanor had died 5 years ago. I was at the funeral. I gave the eulogy. I held Margaret's hand while she cried. Real tears or performance, I still couldn't say. Afterward, Margaret had collected all the paperwork. I'll handle the boring legal stuff, she had said. You girls don't need to worry about the details. I hadn't questioned it. I was grieving. I trusted my mother. At home, I opened the forwarded emails on my laptop. The full picture emerged in sickening detail. Grandma Eleanor had left a will. The house on Maple Lane was to go to the granddaughter who demonstrates care for the family. Ambiguous language, open to interpretation. But Margaret, as executor, had made the interpretation herself. She decided it meant Taylor. The transfer was completed quietly, without my knowledge, without any discussion, without even the pretense of fairness. One email stood out from the rest. It was from the lawyer handling the estate, expressing concern about the process. Mrs. Blake, the will's language is ambiguous. Both granddaughters could arguably qualify under the stated criteria. Are you certain you don't want to discuss this with Catherine before proceeding? It might prevent future complications. Margaret's reply was 3 words. Proceed as instructed. 3 words that erased me from my grandmother's legacy. I went to the Glastonbury property records online. Public information, available to anyone. 47. Maple Lane, transferred from the Eleanor Blake estate to Taylor Marie Kensington. Date of transfer, 4 years and 3 months ago. Value at time of transfer, $342,000. The current market value was closer to $400,000. The puzzle pieces clicked into place. Around the same time as the transfer, I remembered Taylor suddenly having money for a down payment on her current house. She'd bought a new car, supposedly a gift from Derek's bonus. She started the spending habits that had never stopped. It wasn't Derek's bonus. It wasn't savings. It was the rental income from Grandma's house. Every month, that property generated at least $2,000. For 4 years, Taylor had been collecting approximately $24,000 a year, possibly more, while crying poor and asking me for money, while I paid the property taxes on our parents' house, while I funded her fake candle business, while I gave up my promotion to stay close to a family that was robbing me blind. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running calculations, trying to process the scope of what I'd discovered. Then I remembered something I hadn't thought about in years. After Grandma Eleanor's funeral, Margaret had distributed keepsakes from the estate. Taylor received Grandma's pearl necklace, worth thousands, a family heirloom. I received a small wooden jewelry box. "Mother wanted you to have this," Margaret had said dismissively, handing it to me like an afterthought. "There's some old papers inside, recipes or something." I had tucked it away in my closet and never looked at it again. I was grieving. Old recipes didn't seem important. At 2 a.m, I got out of bed and dug through my closet until I found it. The wooden box, dusty and forgotten, wedged behind old yearbooks and winter clothes. Inside were what I expected. Faded photographs, a dried flower pressed between tissue paper, handwritten recipe cards in my grandmother's elegant script. But at the bottom, beneath everything else, was an envelope, yellowed with age, my name written on the front in shaky but unmistakable handwriting. Catherine. My hands trembled as I opened it. "My dearest Catherine, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I want you to know something important. I've watched you your whole life. I've seen how hard you work, how much you give, how little you ask for. You are the heart of this family, even if they don't see it. Even if they never say it. I've made provisions. The house on Maple Lane is meant for you, for the one who truly cares for this family. Don't let your mother convince you otherwise. She has her own ideas about who deserves what. But I know the truth. I've always known. I love you, sweetheart, more than I ever said, more than you probably knew. Grandma Eleanor." At the bottom of the letter, in smaller writing, was a postscript. "P.S. The lawyer has a copy of my true wishes. His name is Richard Holloway. If something seems wrong, find him." I sat on my bedroom floor, surrounded by evidence of a betrayal I was only beginning to understand. The forwarded emails, the property records, my grandmother's letter. I created a timeline. 5 years ago. Grandma Eleanor dies, leaves house to the granddaughter who cares for the family. 4 years ago. Margaret transfers the deed to Taylor, ignoring Eleanor's clear intent, ignoring the lawyer's concerns, ignoring me entirely. 3 years ago, I start paying the family's debts, unaware I've been written out of my grandmother's legacy. Present. Taylor owns a property worth nearly $400,000, while I fund the family's lifestyle with money I can't afford to give. The scope of the theft was staggering. The house itself, $380,000 or more, 4 years of rental income, approximately $96,000. Money I had given the family directly, $47,000 and counting. Over $500,000 in wealth that should have been mine, or at least partially mine, had been funneled to Taylor while I sacrificed everything. But it wasn't just about money. My grandmother had seen me, had valued me, had tried to protect me from beyond the grave, and my mother had intercepted that protection and handed it to the daughter who already had everything. My father, did he know? That email was in his inbox. He must have seen it. Had he let this happen? Had he watched Margaret steal my inheritance and said nothing? Everything I believed about my family was a lie. Something fundamental shifted in my chest that night. Not breaking, hardening. The guilt that had governed my entire life suddenly felt absurd. I had been apologizing for existing while they were stealing my future. The next morning I called Carol. "I found something," I said. My voice was flat, calm, dangerously calm. Something bad. Tell me. I explained everything. The emails, the property records, my grandmother's letter. Carol listened in complete silence. When I finished, she asked, "What do you want to do?" "I don't know yet. I need to think." "Are you going to confront them?" "Not yet. They'll just lie. They'll gaslight me, make me feel crazy, turn it around somehow. That's what they always do." "Then what?" I paused, feeling the weight of the decision forming. "I'm going to find out everything, every lie, every dollar, every secret, and then I'm going to decide what to do with the truth." "Your grandmother mentioned a lawyer, Richard Holloway." "I'm going to find him. I need to know exactly what she intended." Carol's voice was gentle but firm. "Get documentation. Build your case. Even if you never use it, you'll have it." "I'm not sure I want a legal case. I just want the truth." "Honey, the truth is your case. Once you have it, you'll know what to do." I spent the following weeks gathering evidence. I found Richard Holloway. He had retired to Florida, but he remembered my grandmother clearly. He remembered the will, the specific language, the intent behind it. "Your grandmother was very clear with me," he said over the phone, his voice aged but sharp. "She wanted you to have that house, Catherine. She said you were the only one who truly understood the meaning of family." "Then why did it go to Taylor?" A long pause. "Your mother was the executor. She had the authority to interpret the will's language. I advised against her interpretation, but she was insistent." "You advised against it?" "I told her both granddaughters could qualify under the wording. I suggested she discuss it with you before making a unilateral decision. She declined." "Proceed as instructed," I murmured. "I'm sorry?" "Nothing. Thank you, Mr. Holloway. You've told me everything I need to know." I spent the next 6 months building my case. Bank records, emails, screenshots, timestamps. I printed everything, organized it chronologically,